we can get started. I'll share the presentation in a minute, but before we do that, let's do just a quick round of intros to get acquainted. My name is Scott Choquette. I work with Dewberry Engineers. I'm the project manager for the contractors for West Piedmont Planning District Commission to assist with the 5-year update of the West Piedmont Planning District Commission Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Hi everyone, my name is Jade Payne. I work with Scott at Dewberry and I'll be serving as a mitigation planner on the project.
Good morning everybody, this is Michael Armbrister with West Piedmont PDC. I'll be the project manager on the PDC side.
Okay, good morning everyone. This is Mark McCaskill. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Martinsville.
Good morning, everybody. This is Chris Bridges. I'm the building official and zoning administrator.
All right.
Hey, it's John Turner, Emergency Management Coordinator for the city.
And it's Daryl Hatcher from Soba Health in Martinsville.
And this is Jeff Golden. I'm the Public Works Director, and I've got Nolan Kirk, who was a GIS technician with me.
Great. And we're going to have some guests from a hospital, I believe. Are they on the call?
Yeah, that's Daryl.
That's Daryl. Okay. All right. Did we get everybody? All right. Give me a second and I'll share my screen. All right. Can everybody see the slideshow now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the first meeting of the Martinsville local planning team for the update of the hazard mitigation plan. There is a larger mitigation advisory committee with representatives from each county, city, and town that met back in December and had a kickoff meeting. And the purpose of this meeting today is really more to sort of roll up our sleeves and gather some data from you to make sure we're current with everything as we go through the plan update process. I know some of you have been through this process before, and some are on that mitigation advisory committee, but we're going to start the meeting with just 17 or 18 slides to just kind of give a general overview of why we're doing this, what's at stake, and kind of how the process works, just to set the stage. And then the remainder of the meeting will be a discussion about data and changes since the 26 plan. So we'll look at the purpose and the need for the plan, the update process, and all of the components that go into it. So the reason, or one of the reasons that we're doing this plan update, is that the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 amended the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief Act, which is the act that provides money after disasters for public assistance, individual assistance, and hazard mitigation. And back in 2000, they passed this modification to the act, which requires state, local, territorial, and tribal governments to have a current hazard mitigation plan updated every 5 years that identifies actions for that 5-year period to reduce damages. So the idea was to break that damage, rebuild, damage again cycle, and make government entities responsible for being proactive about disaster loss reduction. So the purpose is to encourage disaster preparedness and encourage projects and activities that will prevent damage. So the Planning District Commission did its first plan back in 2006, and I believe this is the 4th update. The last one was in 2016. The state The Commonwealth of Virginia also has a hazard mitigation plan that's updated on a 5-year cycle, and that plan provides information that we use to assist us with this plan preparation, and our plan updates inform the state hazard mitigation plan, so it's sort of a two-way exchange of information. So this plan looks at natural hazards and some man-made and human-caused hazards that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but a natural hazard essentially is any natural event that poses risk to people, infrastructure, and resources. And mitigation is the focus of this plan. Sometimes we talk a lot about response and recovery and preparedness, but the focus here is really on hazard mitigation, which are sustainable actions that reduce or eliminate injury to people, damages to buildings and infrastructure, and continuity of critical functions. So we tend to think about projects that reduce damage to things, but also when we have a disaster, public works, public safety, debris, administrative expenditures, those things oftentimes end up costing more than the actual physical damages. So we're looking to create projects that reduce those types of resource burdens as well. We want to create resiliency and sustainability, promote data sharing, as I mentioned already. It's really a decision-making support document, and lastly, it makes us eligible for certain forms of disaster assistance, particularly hazard mitigation grants. So there's 3 FEMA grants for which you have to have an approved plan. The first one is a new one. It's called Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities, or the BRIC program for short. And some of you may remember the PDM program, or pre-disaster mitigation. Well, BRIC has replaced that, and it's an annual program where a certain amount of money is made available to each state, and then there's a larger nationwide competitive pool. But what this program is sort of refocused on, or the changes since PDM, is it's really focused, as the name implies, on infrastructure, larger infrastructure projects, community lifelines, socially vulnerable areas. So it's shifted from looking at smaller elevation or acquisition of a property or a culvert or a generator to larger infrastructure projects. It's significantly better funded than the PDM ever was so far. 2020 was the first round, and it's supposed to go up into the billions in 2021. Another interesting component of BRIC that wasn't as easy in the past is that it has a component called capability and capacity building, where you can now phase projects and it will pay for studies, engineering, design, all of the things that lead up to the project that were typically on the community's back prior to this program. So for that reason, I think this is going to be a pretty popular program. The HMGP program is a post-disaster grant program where typically 15%, sometimes more, of the overall damages from a particular disaster are made available for hazard mitigation grants after the disaster occurs. And typically, regardless of what county or area of the Commonwealth the disaster is in, the grant is usually made available to the entire state. All of these are FEMA programs, but they're run through VDEM, Virginia Department of Emergency Management. The FMA program is specifically related to the National Flood Insurance Program and reducing damages to insured buildings. It's a smaller amount of money, and that one is focused specifically on these insured buildings. So it's typically elevations, acquisitions, drainage projects that protect properties that have had repetitive flood claims, etc. So the last allocation of HMGP funds were as a result of Tropical Storm Michael and Hurricane Florence in 2018. Those funds have been allocated. So barring another disaster, the next opportunity for grant applications will be the BRIC program, which will be sometime in the September, October timeframe. in 2021. So this plan update is timely because it gives us a great opportunity to identify projects that may be eligible for that BRIC program this fall. Lastly, on this slide, we tend to focus on FEMA grant programs, but I encourage you not to make this a plan that's only about things that are eligible for FEMA, because there's a lot of other sources of funding out there pre and post disaster. And just because a project is not eligible for a FEMA grant doesn't mean it shouldn't make its way into the plan. So we'll look at a lot of other funding opportunities. How can the plan be used? The next couple of slides are just examples of things that the grants can be used for: structural projects like culverts and infrastructure, bank stabilization, retrofits at the building level, standby power for critical facilities, things like that. This is just an example of a study that was done in a rural area that identifies a lot of drainage improvements, a lot of erosion issues, and it shows on the upper right-hand side a highway or a rural highway that was taken out during Floyd and the post-project that passed the flood in Irene, which is a very similar return frequency event. Just an example. So the hazards that are included in the plan, we'll start with the natural hazards. I won't read the list, but it's all the ones that you might think would be in there. There's a requirement now to look at climate change. So for most of the natural hazards, climate change is expected to have some impact. So example, again, we seem to be, whether it's climate change or not, we seem to be seeing an increase in these high intensity, short duration rainfall events that are causing a lot of pluvial or drainage flooding, as opposed to looking at the big riverine 100-year floods that we have tended to focus on in the past. Increases in droughts, which relate to increases in wildfires, et cetera. So each of these sections, we won't have a separate climate change section in the plan, but for each hazard that is in there, we'll add a section that addresses expected impacts of climate change on those particular hazards. Man-made hazards that were added back in 2006 and have continued to remain in the plan are dam failure, high voltage transmission lines, spills, pipeline failures, and agri-terrorism. The strategies that we'll look at generally fall within these buckets. Prevention being things typically more policy oriented that look at future development, so zoning, building codes, regulations, things like that. Structural projects, as the name implies, are kind of earth moving projects. Property protection is more site specific. Emergency services and public education are kind of the buckets that we put these projects in. I'll give just an example of each of these categories quickly for flood. So structural projects, you can see things like culverts and bridges, channel improvements, levees, flood walls. Property protection, again, as I said, at the property level, securing utilities, anchoring things, flood-proofing buildings. Prevention, zoning, stormwater regulations, NFIP regs, low impact development, green infrastructure, things like that. Natural resources, acquisition of flood-prone land, wetlands, preservation, those types of things. And then emergency services looks at more of the egress, access, moving things out of harm's way, kind of the crossover between preparedness and mitigation, building capabilities to respond, et cetera. And then public education, I don't need to go through the examples, but the reason that one is emphasized heavily is that, within Martinsville, you have your own vulnerabilities, but a lot of those vulnerabilities are on private property, commercial property, et cetera. So the public education piece is to kind of encourage people to take responsibility for preventing damages to their own property. These are just some non-flood related items. storm removal, hardening utilities, bracing for earthquakes, shelters, critical facilities, etc. So sort of the process that we have to follow. For those who haven't been through this before, you would think that a 5-year update is just going in and addressing what's changed in the last 5 years and refreshing your strategies and moving on. But really, you have to go through the entire planning process all over again and demonstrate to the reviewers at VDEM and FEMA that people were involved in the process, how they were involved, how stakeholders were involved, such as the hospital we have with us today, how the public is involved, and how the plan will be monitored, maintained, and updated. And all of that stuff has to be carefully documented. So it's not a situation where you can hire a consultant just to update the plan and come back and provide it to you. There has to be documentation of participation. So we appreciate you being here today. The biggest lift in the whole process is the hazard ID risk and vulnerability assessment. So for each of those hazards that we looked at, we'll go back through, we'll refresh the profiles with any new events that have happened since 2016. We'll use better available GIS and other data to identify vulnerabilities and potential losses. It's kind of a continuous improvement process. And then we'll also look at development trends, climate change, and other things that maybe are different than they were in 2016, and refresh each of those hazard sections. Based on that, that's sort of the homework that you do before you make your investment. Based on the risk assessment, you refresh the mitigation strategy and actions that you want to take in the next 5 years. And then lastly, capabilities. We look at policies, programs, staffing, dollar resources, et cetera, to determine what's improved, what's got worse, and what gaps could potentially be filled in the form of strategies. And then there's a whole process of approval and review and approval by the agencies that we'll talk about at a subsequent meeting. Where we are in the process, so we had that mitigation advisory committee that I talked about. We've developed that and these local mitigation or local planning teams. We had a kickoff meeting where we sort of set the stage, discussed the hazard ranking, the goals and objectives, and how we're going to move forward. Today or this week, we're at these local planning team meetings where we're going to kind of roll up the sleeves and gather some information from you. And based on that, we'll complete the capability assessment and the hazard ID and risk assessment. And we'll come back up for a kind of milestone meeting, workshop 1 of the larger group, where we'll present the capabilities and the risk assessment and begin developing the new mitigation goals and strategies. At that point, we'll be seeking your help, if not sooner, with public input. We're going to do a story map online. We'll probably ask you to post some things on your website, public surveys, public meetings, and other forms of community engagement. And the idea is after this milestone, we'll go back and finalize all these things. And then in between, then we'll probably have another series of these local planning team meetings. And then the second to last major workshop will be to finalize the mitigation strategy. And then the third milestone workshop will, or really the fourth, if you count the kickoff meeting, will be the draft plan presentation. So these are milestone steps. There will be a lot of contact in between all of these, and it's our goal to do the heavy lifting, and rely on you to review things, provide data, et cetera. After it's your plan and not ours. We can do the hardest part of the work, but we definitely need you to commit to reviewing things and providing input as we go along through the process to make sure that at the end of the day, the plan is a usable document that reflects what you want to do in the next 5 years. That's pretty much the end of the overview piece. So for the rest of the meeting, Jade had sent out a couple of pieces of documentation to look at. There's a kind of a data collection sheet and an Excel workbook that had your strategies from the last plan and updates as of a month or two ago, or maybe 3 now. So we're going to look at community profiles, critical facilities, GIS data, the things on this list, and kind of just talk with you through what has changed and what hasn't changed since then. So with that, I'm going to get rid of the slideshow and call up that other document. So bear with me for 1 minute. Before we go into the working part, any questions on the overview? Okay. All right. So what this document that I'm showing now is basically, we went through the plan and picked out pertinent sections that were directly related to Martinsville that we need updated data on. Some things, most things probably haven't changed a lot since 2016, but this is our opportunity, kind of the first opportunity to do a run through of what might have changed. So we'll look at development trends, critical facility changes, talk about available GIS data that we'll need to do the risk analysis, changes to capabilities in these 4 or 5 different areas. We'll take a quick look at the final hazard ranking, or the ranking from last time with the input we got from the Mitigation Advisory Committee in December to make sure you agree with that from the city's perspective. And then we'll end the meeting going through that Excel worksheet and looking at the strategies from 2016. And I know you've already done that, so it should go quickly. What we're really looking at this go around is which ones should be scrapped if it's no longer feasible, which ones should be carried forward, modified, etc. So this first piece comes from the community profile, and it talks about development trends. So what we're interested in hearing from you is, have there been any major or even minor changes in development in Martinsville since 2016 that are noteworthy for the plan, particularly things that would increase risk if any development has been in the floodplain or related to any of the other hazards, but also just development trends in general.
This is Chris. You've got an updated zoning ordinance. I don't know if that is something that needs to be addressed just because there's another section that addresses zoning.
Yeah.
And we are continuing to update that as we use it and find areas that need to be cleaned up. So do we need to include the new zoning ordinance somewhere, or just mention that it was a new one was approved?
Yeah, when we get the capabilities section a bit further down in this document, we'll talk about that. But what we'd be interested in knowing is like a summary of what were the changes and what
Wholesale change is nothing like what it used to be.
Okay. So probably is that available on your website or?
Yes.
Okay. We'll make a note to, we'll do a quick review through it and see what pieces of it might have an impact on hazard mitigation.
Okay.
So that's good to know. And then this section is getting at more like what's been happening since 2016 in terms of development. And I know that's impacted by the zoning.
Right. And I mean, we've got a couple of projects that are in the works right now, but nothing that's been completed
Okay.
significantly other than, a couple of houses, that kind of thing. So I don't.
Okay.
I guess the mean, I can't think of any significant development that's happened. We have reduced, well, it's not really any change in rain runoff area. At the mall is now physically smaller, but it's paved. So
Okay. Okay. That's really all we need. We don't, if there's not a lot that's happened, then we don't need to.
probably, I mean, we've got a couple of parcels that had some fairly significant demolitions. One is probably a 3-acre site, and another is just completed with a 9-acre site.
And when you say demolition, that's to make way for something new?
Well, both of them were fire damaged structures,
Okay.
factories. And we just are completing the 9-acre site. Like,
Okay.
probably doing finals at the end of next week kind of thing.
Okay.
And then there will be a development going back on that parcel. There's not one going back on the 3 to 4 acre site at this time.
Okay. Is the 9-acre one in a floodplain or anything like that?
No.
Okay. All right.
No, it's pretty much by ordinance. You can't build there, and if you do, that's one of the zoning ordinance changes that we're going to look at updating. We're currently going through the anchor benchmarking process, and we'll probably take those recommendations of either completely denying it or making it go to the 3 feet above 100 year instead of 1 foot above 100 year.
Okay. And that's not in effect now, but that's what you're looking at.
Right.
Okay. Great.
And building, this is Mark, building on what Chris said. Most of the development that's been happening has been redevelopment in Uptown, so probably may not have a nexus with what you're looking for here because it's redevelopment of existing buildings that have been there for a long time into residential or something like that.
Right. Okay.
And the anchor process that Chris mentioned, I think, is the Alliance. Was it Chris? The Alliance for Community Resilience.
Yeah, you're probably familiar with it. It's Alliance for National and Community Resilience.
Or Chris had arranged for Martinsville to become a pilot project for their benchmarks. So that's an interesting process that we're going through that has some, I guess, interactions and spillovers with this.
Yeah, we'd definitely be interested in learning more about that. That should be highlighted in this plan as a capability for sure. I'll make a note to follow up more on that.
I'll go ahead and send you the web link to Anchor and go from there.
Great. All right. The next area of focus is critical facilities. Any changes? So any decommissioned, any added, any with new generators or significant changes. I'm not a big fan of this table from the last plan, but it just basically lists the number of these facilities that you had back then. Total of 28, and you can see what categories they fell into. Can you think of any changes to that?
This is Mark again. Megan Spencer in her office, who's not on this call, is we're currently trying to update the community facilities section of the comprehensive plan as well. So I don't have the latest draft in front of me, but if there are any changes that come from that, we'll communicate that later.
Okay. All right, and then which leads into the next section, GIS data. When Megan is doing that update for the comp plan, is that an exercise in GIS or is it just a list?
I got to unmute. It's more of a narrative thing. For our GIS, Nolan is there with Jeff on the call.
Nolan, do you have any of these critical facilities as GIS point data? I asked the question because in the last plan we did do a point layer of all the critical facilities in the entire district area, and I just want to make sure that as we do the analysis that list is up to date, or at least reflects what you all think are critical facilities.
Yeah, we'll get together with Megan and make sure that list is updated on the GIS map.
Okay. And then last time we had some areas in the region had parcel data, some had building footprints. Most of the parcels were tied to tax records for value and other building attributes. Has any of that changed or been updated since 2016? Revals, anything like that?
Do you mind repeating the last part of your question?
Yeah. So we're looking for parcel data, building footprints if available, and some kind of linkage of either of those to tax records for values and construction type. And the question was, has any of that
available in 2016? I don't know I don't know that we've improved it since then.
Okay, that was basically the question.
Are you looking for something that when you click on the parcel, it identifies it also as a critical structure?
No, we sort of moved. I'm sorry, I should have been more clear. We sort of moved on from critical structures to we're just looking for building data to use in the analysis. So, for example, if we're overlaying floodplains or wild and urban interfaces or whatever the hazard happens to be, we're just looking for any updated data in terms of buildings.
The only update would be we've got a 2016 and a 2019 flyover data. So our
and then no reevaluations that changed values of properties.
Well, it's the commissioner goes through every 2 years and updates the assessment value.
Okay.
So what it is current, whatever is listed on GIS today is the actual current assessed value.
Okay. And is that, are those GIS layers and joins and all that stuff available online as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are public view, but they are not mobile friendly. How about that? So
okay.
If there's an improvement to be made, it would be making that whole system more mobile device friendly.
Okay.
And these assessments that Chris is mentioning and values and the tax information, all that are in the form of a clickable PDF property card in the GIS. So that's, further, it's not, I don't know if Nolan knows if it's exportable from the online system or not, but it's, people have to interact it by clicking and bringing up a PDF. for each parcel.
Yeah, what we'd be interested in more than the parcel by parcel is actually having the parcel layer joined to the tax records so that we can do analysis with it. And that's probably not what you make available to the public, but that's kind of what we'd be looking for.
Can you repeat that? What, I mean, have you looked at our GIS lately?
No.
I mean, that would be, I don't quite understand what you're saying, because you click on the actual parcel, you get a snapshot that includes deed book page number, assessed value, zoning classification, transfer date, map number, account number, that kind of thing. And then you also get a pull down menu that will give you the property card information from the commissioner.
Right. I understand all that. We're
So
looking for.
So what was the enhanced version of what you were looking for?
We're looking more for the raw GIS data so that we can actually use it for analysis.
As far as
At the actual
like
parcel.
topo, latitude, longitude.
No, the actual parcel layer, the parcel layer.
We
So
can,
not,
we can provide you with the shape files if you need them.
yeah, that's what
Yeah.
we're looking for.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. That's
Yep.
what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, no, the stuff you're talking about is great for the public, but we need to use it like in mass for the whole community as opposed to looking at a specific property. So the shape
Right.
files are exactly what we
And we would have to, I mean, we can give you ours, and then we'd have to get with Hendrick County to give you the same thing for Hendrick County.
Okay.
But we work together on that, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. And we're going to be meeting with them soon as well.
Okay.
We just want to make sure we did analysis with all the parcel shape files and values last time, and we just want to redo it with more current stuff is all we're getting at.
So do you want to reach out like to me or Nolan and request it, or how do you want to work that?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, once we have I'll have our GIS person who speaks the same language do that in the next few days. Okay. Any other GIS data, the hazard layers, other like we have the floodplains and things like that? Okay.
Yes, there are floodplain boundaries on that as one of the layers you can select.
Okay. All right. And we have access to that as well. Okay. Let's make a quick note. All right, the next section is capabilities that were identified in the last plan. So assuming the form of government hasn't changed, you still have a city manager system, a city council. Oh, that's Danville. Same ideas. And then this section here identified what you considered in 2016 to be the key departments related to hazard mitigation. And as you can see, it was community development, which fire and EMS, police, utilities, and public works. Has anything changed with that structure since 2016?
I believe that's all still the same, Scott.
Okay, all right. The next table essentially is looking at positions. So land use planner, building people, emergency management, as you can see across the row in gray. And these are the departments that were identified in 2016 as having these people. I'm assuming that probably has not changed.
Looks pretty current.
Okay.
Yeah, still the same.
All right.
You do have internet access with a check mark to the right. The city has a separate broadband utility as well. I don't know if that's a part of this or not for communications or.
Yeah, that we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but that's kind of, that column may be a little outdated. I think most people have internet access these days. The next was fiscal capability, and these were budgets from 2016. I'm assuming you probably don't have these on the spot to update right now, but
I'm waiting on the overall from finance now. Public safety is up to 11.5.
okay.
Of course, that is subject to change depending on the status of the city in the next couple of years, because that figure does include the sheriff's department. And if the city status changes, then that will be absorbed by the county.
And you building on that, you may be aware that the cities and the state has a formal reversion from city to town charter status, and the city's in the middle of that, and it's predicted to be a couple-year process.
Okay.
There's a whole mechanism at the state, including a 3-judge panel, so it has to go through all that first.
Okay. All right. So that'll probably that'll be more of a topic for the next plan update in 5 years from now, but we can mention it in there. All right. So for these budget numbers, we'll just reach out to you to fill in these other columns after the meeting.
Did when we talked to our colleagues in finance, because we're in the budget process now, did you want the current budget, even though it's, this year is kind of a COVID impacted, we're figuring COVID out budget, or did you want the budget that was right before the COVID stuff started happening to be a more typical budget?
Honestly, some of these tables are straight from the FEMA guidance. And frankly, I don't think it matters much. I think the whole idea is to just get a picture of whether it's in general going up or down. So
The
probably
numbers.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The numbers that I provided did not. The public safety numbers provided do not include the COVID adjustments,
Okay.
like for CARES Act money and all that. I didn't include that in there because it's not an accurate reflection. We're not going to have that again next year, more than likely.
Yeah, I would say we're more interested in the non-COVID adjusted.
Right. That's what I provided.
So this next table addresses other sources of funding for the city. And the last time these were the boxes you checked, so I'm assuming you still don't have a development impact fee, a stormwater utility fee, or intergovernmental agreements that provide funding. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay.
And Michael Armbruster, since you're on the call, just out of curiosity, do you know if anyone in Virginia has development impact fees? Or because Virginia is more of a proffer style of state?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any to be able to answer that question.
All right, we'll remove that column. This comes from a generic national guidance document, and that's why some of these things are in there. So if it's no for everybody, we'll just get rid of that column. This looks like a repeat table. So next is policy and program capabilities. So for your NFIP mapping, the current date is still 2008. Are you all in the middle of an update process like the counties around you? Or we haven't spoken with Henry County yet, but Pennsylvania and Franklin were both in the process of flood map updates. Do you know if that's happening where you are?
It is.
Okay. All right, and then you have a standalone zoning ordinance for your National Flood Insurance Program regs that you're in the process of updating. So I'm assuming that will also be updated to incorporate the new mapping when it's available.
So is there something that we should, since we're in the middle of updating, is there something we should do to incorporate NFIP into the zoning ordinance as far as, I don't know, no build zones, that kind of thing?
Well, all this is saying is that you have a standalone ordinance as opposed to including it in your zoning. Maybe that's not accurate. I don't know. That's what was in the 2016 plan. So you will, once the new mapping is done, you will have to incorporate that by reference into the ordinance or the zoning. But I don't know when that will be. From what I understand, it's still kind of just in the scoping phase where they're determining which areas they're going to restudy. So whether it's standalone or in the zoning, yeah, it will have to be changed when the new maps are done. But in terms of adding freeboard and prohibiting development, it doesn't matter if it's in a standalone ordinance or part of your zoning ordinance. It could be done in either place, whichever works best administratively for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing an opportunity for an improvement if there was one available.
Yeah, I think what you're proposing to do is an excellent improvement. So it doesn't really matter where it is. Whether it's in a freestanding ordinance or a part of the zoning, it's really just a matter of what works best for you all in terms of enforcement. So it said in 2016, stormwater management is a focus of the comp plan with respect to hazard mitigation. I think you said at the beginning of the meeting that the comprehensive plan is being updated currently.
Yes, chapters are.
Yeah, we're just going to do a brief update, knowing that as we move forward with reversion, we're going to have to do a complete update. So in order to meet the expectations of maintaining some kind of an update schedule, we're going to do a minimal one right now and move on to a much more comprehensive one for the next cycle.
Okay.
So essentially, land use chapter, transportation chapter, the community facilities chapter are the chapters that are in play for the for this minimal update right now.
Okay. All right, so a good project or a strategy might be during that next update cycle where you're doing kind of a full rewrite, that you incorporate some of the mitigation stuff. Or resilience with the anchor program that you're working with. All right. All right. What is the status of your emergency operations plan?
It was updated in 2018. It's a 4-year update. Yeah, September of 2018.
Is that available online?
Yes, there should be a redacted version online.
Okay. The next looks at legal authority and, or no, I'm sorry, that I think that title is in the wrong place. It's a capabilities self-assessment. And what this was, what the L's are for low, M's for moderate, and it's you ranking yourselves on what your capabilities are in each of these categories. So obviously planning and regulatory is one. Administrative and technical is basically, do you have staff, do you have the engineering staff available to do grants and administer programs, et cetera. Fiscal related to budget. Political is more related to political will to do resilience and mitigation. And then an overall ranking. You ranked yourselves low, pretty low last time. Is that still the case? And
Well,
low
if
doesn't
we
low
are
doesn't
going
mean
through the benchmarking process, I would say that we can step it up a good bit. Because there are going to be probably some action items for council coming out of that. And the last presentation, they were receptive to that. So,
okay. Yeah. And low doesn't translate to bad. It just means like you don't have enough resources, I think is what you were saying the last time. So okay, we can step these up and have you take a look at it. And when these are actually in the plan update, you'll see them in context a little bit more. Similarly, this next table looks at more at ordinances and how they and regs and how they support hazard mitigation. So high is for specifically includes hazard mitigation. M, elements could support mitigation. L, no mention of hazard mitigation. And then the other two, the other one is under development. So building and fire code, you said support.
I would say that the Uniform Statewide Building Code that incorporates both of those would both be high.
I was thinking the same thing, that it should be. I would think the floodplain management ordinance should be high too, especially with the changes that you're looking at making. Okay.
You can go ahead and add the fire code since it's part of the Uniform Statewide Building Code. That's uniform, not unified.
Yeah, right. Okay, I'm assuming you still don't have a post-disaster reconstruction or redevelopment ordinance. Most folks don't.
We could, if somebody's got an example out there, we can certainly consider it.
Okay. And subdivision ordinance you put as a medium, unified development ordinance and zoning, they all contribute to mitigation some level.
Yeah, I would say, again, depending on what our benchmarks, how we shake that out, that might improve to a higher level, especially given the opportunities for change that are coming.
Okay. Okay. So the next area,
Hey Scott, I can put it in the chat. There was some that weren't mentioned in the 2016 plan, some topics that might be worthwhile seeing if there's any updates now.
okay.
But it was transportation, and then infrastructure, hazard events, and then public alerting or text to 911 availability that some of the other counties and cities had.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. So, now I'm echoing it myself. Hold on. Not sure why. Have there been any major changes to transportation within the city? Discontinued roads, new roads? Okay.
Since 2016, you have had a 3 to 5 lane improvement on Liberty Street. So it's, I don't know if that counts towards evacuation or not.
Would that help with evacuation?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's probably the most significant since 2016.
Okay.
Last year, the state did start a intercity bus service, and Martinsville's the beginning of the line to a line that goes through Danville and eventually, I think, ends up in DC, going through several places.
All right. Any major infrastructure changes, additions of water, sewer?
Most of that is replacement of significant portions of existing
Okay.
Jeff can probably.
Yeah, we replaced 7 miles of the Smith River interceptor. And we are in the process of redoing the spillway at the reservoir dam. That will be completed probably by June. And do you want future projects or, because there is another interceptor that we're looking at replacing, the Jones Creek, which will be 3.5 miles of sewer interceptor.
Jones Creek.
Jones Creek, yeah.
Which, is the entire city on public water?
It is.
Okay. How about
There have been small water line replacements, but it's no more than a street at a time. It's not a major. The entire city's on public water and public sewer, and I guess electric as well. But I can't really speak to anything about the electric department.
Okay. From the water perspective, we're looking at mostly fire suppression. So is there a decent network of hydrants?
There is. And
Yeah.
good, and we have good pressure.
All right.
Yeah, we're maintaining, I think, a 3 and a 4 on ISO.
Right now, we're a 3. I'm not sure when the next ISO update comes by, but it should be soon.
We're also maintaining a 3 on BSEGs.
Right. Thinking back to that list of hazards that I'm sorry, did you have something else?
Well, I don't know if you'd want to put this in there or not, but it just so happens the way they designed it, the sewer has no pump stations. So in an extreme disaster, you would not have sewer backups that you would see in other places where you lose power. We're all gravity.
Great. Okay. Keeping in mind that list of hazards we looked at, have there been, I know there was Tropical Storm Michael caused some problems in the area, and Hurricane Florence. Any damages from those and or other events, large winter storms, wind events, man-made events?
The biggest thing with Tropical Storm Michael was wind and down trees, which led to power outages. It was somewhere around between $600,000 and $700,000 worth of damages submitted.
26 or 7,000.
No, 600,000 to 700,000.
Okay.
That's what I put in through FEMA for reimbursement. The other issues have just been flash floods.
So you submitted for FEMA PA for 600,000 to 700,000. Did you get most of that?
Yeah, we've still got about 200,000 in queue because they considered it a large project and it's still going through the review process.
Doesn't happen fast. Okay, and then you said some other flash flooding.
Yeah, we had some flash floods. May of 2018 was somewhere around $400,000. And that was submitted for state PA.
All right. All right. Public alerting and text to 911 systems. Any changes to your warning systems or alert systems or text to 911 since 2016?
No, we still have the text to 911. If I can get a break from the pandemic, then we're going to work on iPaws, but there's no time frame on that.
Okay. So this next piece looks at the hazards that were in the previous plan. And the key word here is planning consideration level. So we have this spreadsheet and it looks at the probability of an event, the primary impacts, like damages, the secondary impacts, disruption to commerce, public works, public safety, expenditures, etc., the area of the community impacted typically, and a few other things, and it weights them and comes out with a kind of a level of consideration we should give to that particular hazard in the document. So like, because tornado says limited, it doesn't mean it's a limited threat. It just means that because of a variety of those weighted factors, it gets less consideration than flooding or winter storms. So in 2011, this column here was what things were ranked, and this is kind of overall for the whole commission area. 2016, it changed a little bit, so you can see hurricane winds went from moderate to medium high. Drought went down a little, etc. This column is what's in the Commonwealth's plan. So essentially, at the Mitigation Advisory Committee meeting in December, we went through this and looked at it in a little more detail. The general consensus is that that tornado should go up a little bit, and I believe earthquake should go up a little bit. Purpose of showing this is just to see if there's anything that you feel strongly should go up or down from that middle column. And then what we're going to do when we get kind of the consensus of all the jurisdictions in the region is go back through and try to adjust the table to reflect the consensus. And I know if there's something that's particularly problematic and more so in Martinsville than would be elsewhere in the county, we should know that too.
I think region-wide, the levels look accurate.
Okay. All right. And obviously, there'll be a chance to review all this stuff when you can see it all in context. All right. So the next, similarly, these goals and objectives are from 2016, and they're for the entire region. So there's a total of 9 goals. I'm not going to go through all this, but they basically deal with protecting people and property, reducing damages to the community, homes, businesses, and infrastructure made more safe, existing infrastructure, function of critical services, kind of covers the whole gamut of all the things you want to protect. So there's an outreach and education one. There's a promoting mitigation as a public value, technology one, and then one that talks about regional approaches. And then for each one of those, there's a specific objective in that, or a set of objectives. And the way it will work was when we actually develop the projects and actions that you want to undertake in the next 5 years, they should link to these goals and objectives. To me, this is a very comprehensive, well, first I should say it's general enough to kind of cover all of the bases. I don't think you're going to find a project that's not going to align with one of these goals or objectives. I sometimes simplify them a little bit more than this, just to make it easier to link, because it's all basically the same thing: people, property, infrastructure, continuity of government, and future development protection are kind of the big ones. So we can go through these and see if they all make sense, or there's nothing that says that they have to change from 2016 to now. Or we can send this to you as we start producing drafts, and if you have a problem or a change or something that you want to add specific to Martinsville, you can do that. Is there anybody that wants to go through these in detail?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but what we do is once we have a project, we identify the goal and expand on it. Like the top of our spreadsheet is 2.1.1. That just means it's the first project for Martinsville under goal 2.1.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't have to do it exactly like that, but yeah, essentially, if you identify a goal and objective, you have to have a strategy to meet it. is the bottom line.
Yeah, I think we made some amendments in 19 or maybe 20 with the nationwide project. I think we had to add a couple of strategies in there.
Yeah, and we have those. Okay. We'll take a crack at cleaning these up, or maybe even not, and we'll distribute it as a draft and let you review it on your own time frame, so that we don't have to go through it today unless anybody wants to. And then, based on the risk assessment that we'll be updating and these goals and objectives, is obviously the mitigation action plan that includes the strategies. And what we did last time is we had this kind of list of alternatives that everybody came up with collectively, and then each jurisdiction kind of picked and chose the ones that they wanted to include for their jurisdiction. So the ones with the low and the medium and the other scores are ones that Martinsville selected as appropriate for them from this list. So the ones that are in that Excel spreadsheet that you recently updated are these ones that are included in the column. So rather than go through this, what we want to do is go through what you recently updated in, I believe, December of 2020, and kind of get some final disposition on those. And then after the next milestone meeting, there'll be another one of these sessions where we'll be specifically focused on just developing your mitigation strategy for the next 5 years. So we don't need to finish that today, but we want to get started on the disposition of the last one, and I'll share that in a sec. All right. So I'm just going to hide a few of these columns so that we can see the screen without having to constantly scroll back and forth. All right. Can everybody read this all right, or do I need to zoom in more? Okay. So the first one is the one you just mentioned, Investigate providing technical assistance for property owners to implement mitigation measures. And actually, before I start on that, I should just say there's kind of a push this go around with updates from FEMA to focus on more measurable 5-year strategies. So we're trying to minimize words like investigate or consider and only put things that are measurable. And then there's other ones that are continue to. So for example, if you had continue to enforce the National Flood Insurance Floodplain Management Ordinance, FEMA will argue that that's a capability. It's something you're already doing. It's not a strategy. So put it in the capabilities and remove it from the strategies. So they're trying to get more focused on measurable things. That said, it's your plan. So, you know, if there's things in there that you like just the way they are, we can leave them that way, but just to sort of set the table before we go through this. So the first one is investigate providing technical assistance for property owners to implement mitigation. The updated status is in progress. Assisting nationwide homes with design and mitigation measures and applied for grants on behalf of residential areas is still in discussion. Okay, so you've got a lot of good update stuff here already. Okay, ongoing.
And I was talking with Jeff, the residential structures listed on here actually did not fall in the floodplain map. And when they redraw those maps, if those are included, then that's a strong possibility that's an acquisition project there.
So I'm assuming we want to keep this strategy in the new plan.
Yes.
And I'm just going to recommend getting rid of the investigate language because you're already sort of investigating. You're trying to move forward. Okay, good. The next one, the next update include more detailed vulnerability assessment for the man-made hazards based on FEMA and VDEM guidance. So we've talked about this one in the other areas where we've had meetings this week. We will be going through each of those and refreshing them and doing an update based on the data that's available. But frankly, there's not a whole lot to update just because there haven't been a lot of incidents related to those man-made natural hazards. The one we'll update the most is the dam breach one. There's more inundation mapping available now, and we have access to some of that, so we'll probably be doing some analysis with that. Problem with this one is if you're getting frequent flooding and you're having tornadoes or wind problems and other, you know, the other more typical events, and you have limited resources to do an update, do you spend those limited resources on this particular, you know, on updating the, you know, high voltage transmission line vulnerability assessment? So this one is sort of, I struggle a little bit about what to do with it. We will be technically meeting the mail to some extent with this plan update, but we will not be doing a you know, significantly more robust analysis for those. I think most others are keeping it in there as a kind of a continuous improvement cycle. If that makes any sense. The next one, identify training opportunities for staff to enhance their ability for GIS for emergency management needs. You say completed in 2018. lapse and session trainings are already in place, ongoing or new employees annually. So it sounds like maybe this one should be moved into the capability assessment and dropped as a strategy.
Yes.
Provide training for local zoning and building code staff on damage assessment, mitigation, and other topics. Okay, ongoing. Similar.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same training on damage assessments.
Yeah. All right. Coordinate with the state to update the D firms. Is this true, or are they still underway?
I think that's a Jeff question.
I'll have to research that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything about it, but I haven't been here. I only came here in August of last year, but I'll look into it and let you know.
Yeah, probably the coordination part is probably complete. I think if you're on the same cycle as the other counties that surround you, then the mapping is not complete, but it's underway. They've done what they call discovery, which is essentially scoping, and they're in process. So we can look into that on our end too, but my impression is that it wasn't done and that we would leave it in there because they probably will not be completed before we complete this plan, but shortly thereafter. So the next go around, it'll be completed. But I'll double check. All right, next one, distribute information packets to raise awareness regarding risks in the region and provide disaster information. So this is not started because of funding and personnel. We have reached out through media outlets promoting preparedness, however, don't have the budget to generate pamphlets, etc. So for this one, for you all to consider, since people are using a lot more social media these days than even in 2016, do you use Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or any of those?
That was one of the considerations for one of the benchmarks for Anchor, that we put out more building related resilience opportunities, that kind of thing. So we were considering that in addition to the website for doing links to like Fortify and
Yep.
Earthcraft and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But to also have a Facebook page dedicated to it, and then also highlight any projects that are doing those sorts of building efforts. Is that what you're talking about? Basically,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
action in two places.
Yeah, exactly. I think in this day and age, kind of distributing information packets has sort of been replaced by using the web and social media. So I would just recommend kind of modifying it to make it more of a web thing.
All right. So does that also count for our public education?
Yeah, there's several of these other ones that might relate or might actually just be collapsed into one strategy. Yeah, like this one here on the row 9, work with media outlets to increase awareness. That could become more of a social media / web-based one as well.
So I guess, John, you and I need to get together and tackle how we're going to do it so both of us can use it.
Yeah, we can draft some new language for for the strategy when we get that far and for you guys to review. But for now, we're just making kind of notes to see where things stand and how they might be changed. We don't have to finalize any decisions today. The next one, work with local home improvement stores to provide workshops to residents on mitigation techniques. Say ongoing, we work with businesses as time and manpower allows, looking for funding opportunities that would allow off-duty personnel to be utilized for such activities. What would you like to do with this one? Is this one that you want to keep chipping away at or remove, modify?
Well, I know that NAHB is researching, best bang for your buck when you're doing upgrades. And I don't think that's completed yet. And, they're doing the value added mitigation efforts. They don't want to spend $1,000 when they might only get a $50 return kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they're actually, the what is it, home improvement labs? Is that what NAHB's research had? I know they're doing that, and I'd feel a whole lot better if we could get something more specific to ask the home improvement stores to do.
Yeah. Yeah, like some of them have done things as simple as like adding hurricane clips or shutters, which is a little bit more of a coastal thing. And you get into the bigger stuff like flood vents and things like that, it gets a little more complicated.
Right. And some of them are, some retrofits make sense and dollar wise, and some just don't. And that's kind of where I don't want people to go, that have like a zero flooding issue, go get smart vents in their crawl spaces. That's
right.
That doesn't make any sense. So would it be more apt to say conduct study of value added mitigation specific to Martinsville?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and those are the kind of things that FEMA is looking for too, rather than just saying it seems like a good idea to do this, but we haven't thought through exactly what we should be preaching about. So that's a good change. I like that. All right, this next one, work with local media outlets to increase awareness of natural hazards by things like seasonal awareness days or hurricane preparedness week, etc. So it sounds like your response is you do it sometimes, but it's kind of limited.
Your local media is not necessarily local media anymore, so it's not like we have a lot of access to them. We're probably going to have to rely on social media to meet that goal.
Yeah, I might suggest combining that with that other social media one we talked about and having like a sub activities, like once a year we'll do X, Y, and Z. And others are coming up with the same conclusion, so we'll create some model language and run it by everybody. All right, next one. Work with the National Weather Service local office to promote Turnaround Don't Drown public education campaign.
Scott, part of this falls under our storm ready status, where we have to do so many things per year with the public. So that might be why a lot of these are still in here.
Okay. Yeah, we need to make a note about the storm ready status in the capability assessment, because I don't think it was really. Did you get that after 2016? Because I don't remember it being highlighted in the capability assessment, and that's a pretty, it's an impressive status.
I'm not sure when it was first obtained. I can find out and shoot you an email back.
Okay.
I know I just updated it a year and a half ago. I think we're due again this year.
All right. Extend and improve tornado siren warning system. You say completed. Currently, the city limits are the physical boundaries for siren sites. Main project is complete. So this one sounds like should move to capabilities. And the reason we're going through all this, so then the new plan will have a table that shows all of the stuff that you did in the last 5 years, and then the ones that carry over into the new, there'll be a second, obviously the new table for the new strategy. So that's why we're tracking the disposition of all these.
Yeah, that one's complete. I'm actually replacing the batteries this year.
Okay, great.
Looks like he's storm ready application. The earliest one I can find is August of 16.
Okay. Yeah, and I should have said it earlier, but we talk about what's changed since the 2016 plan, but keep in mind that most of that 2016 plan could have been written in like 2015, because it just takes a while to go through the approval process and all that. So some things you did in 2016 might not necessarily be in the 2016 plan. All right. Protect cities' facilities to ensure continued functionality after disasters. Talk about a pump station site that needs a generator installed. Telephones and generator circuits have been upgraded. Capital budget request denied due to current pandemic. So it sounds like we want to add these specific things and keep that one in.
Yeah, there was one water tower that does not have a generator. I think after that, all fresh water towers will have backup power.
Okay, and then that pump station site still needs a generator as well.
Yeah, that pump station, we have put that back in the capital plan for this coming year. That's the actual main pump station at the reservoir to pump the raw water from the reservoir to the water treatment plant.
Right, but this one was addressing one, I think, at Grandview.
Yeah, Grandview is taken care of, yes.
Okay.
So, the only one we have in capital right now is the one for the reservoir.
So Grandview pump station is completed. Okay. Address stormwater drainage issues, consider increasing capacity of pipes at Bridge Street. Completed. Third and final section of these designs, spring 2012, completed. Okay, so remove.
Yeah, it still floods there.
Is there something else you could do there as a new strategy?
Well, The flooding issues arise when you get 3 inches of rain in an hour. So, I mean, it's going to flood anywhere.
Contingency plans for utility providers. Project was just recently started. Okay, any updates to that, or just keep it in there as?
Just keep it in there because I believe the electric department was working on a couple of things.
Okay. Okay. Develop a debris management plan. You say that there is one in the current EOP. We'll be reevaluating during the next plan update. So,
And during that plan update is when we were prepping for Tropical Storm Michael and Hurricane Florence. And we actually used a lot of that plan, and it seemed to work very well, especially when I had FEMA reps come measure the debris piles. But I will get with a couple other people and see if we need to leave that one in there or take it out.
okay. Okay. Educate about sheltering in place and other preparedness issues. So note here is a combination of a couple other strategies. Ongoing trading function during public presentations. What would you like to do with this one?
I'd say leave that because that falls in with the storm ready also. But typically when we go out to long-term care facilities or schools, we do fire education, and we also do some storm education as well.
Do you do that, would you say annually or just periodically?
The schools are annually in October. Long-term care is annually, but it's different months of the year.
Okay, good. All right. Obtain generators for Martinsville Middle School. Denied. Okay. Is that still a need?
Yes, we don't have a backup generator to run everything at that facility. There are some generators that run telecom and some of those items, but as far as running it for a shelter, no, we don't have that capability yet.
Is it currently a shelter?
Yes, the middle school is a designated shelter.
That one, if
We got it to where we could bring in a portable generator and hook it up to the middle school.
We were trying to put a tap on the pole out front, and that's what this mobile generator that we proposed was about, and that was when Andy Lash was here. I'm thinking it was about $200,000 because it could power the school, or it could be used at the filter plant if needed for fresh water.
Well, what I was thinking is if we could go ahead and get it prepped so that we could bring in, portable generators as part of our assistance request. All we'd have to do is plug it in and go. Sort of like what the hospital did for their huge flatbed
Right.
connection. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, if we
Yeah.
did that,
And
that might not be as big a ask.
And the electric department was trying to figure out whether they would be able to do it or if we had to get an independent contractor to come in and install that hookup. I'm not sure where Derwin's at with that.
Okay. So we'll add a little bit meat to that. Leave it in there. Also, the hazard mitigation grant program after the next disaster will fund generators. So that's another possibility. Next one, investigate, develop, or enhance the reverse 911 or other public notification systems. It's listed as in progress. Use code red. Okay. Ongoing residents are encouraged to sign up during smoke alarm campaigns.
Guess we could probably add that to the resilience hazard mitigation Facebook page, whatever we title it. The ability to sign up via that page, maybe.
Yeah, it's on our website now. But what we were doing was, before the pandemic, we were going door to door, one weekend a month and doing smoke alarms for all the residents, and we were trying to sign them up then.
Okay. All right. Increase flood warning capabilities related to dam failure. Currently looking at river level warning systems at the hydroelectric dam site. Ongoing primary alerts are in place for essential personnel. State agencies are looking to upgrade iFlows alerts and data logging.
So the state is supposed to be upgrading the iFlows gauges and system. I'm not sure where they are on that. As far as the dam failure, I've gotten with the 911 director, and we did a map for that Code Red program. I think it's labeled dam failure call list or something.
Okay. Is that in GIS that you're aware of?
GIS does have an inundation map overlay listed on it, and that is for the reservoir dam, not the hydroelectric dam. The hydroelectric dam is really not holding back any water. It's silted in all the way up to the gate level. So if it fails, I mean, it's going to be some mud fall out of it, but there's not a massive amount of water stored behind it.
Okay. Oops. All right. Support mitigation of priority disaster-prone structures through promotion of acquisition, demolition, elevation, etc., where feasible. Explore options annually for residential structures. Was added to an addendum in 2019. Still exploring options. New maps may change.
Yeah, once that flood map gets updated, we've got 3 residential structures that we could probably acquire if they're listed in the floodplain. And from what I understand, they're not listed in the floodplain because the creek is actually piped under these houses. And when I spoke with the residents a couple years ago, they were all in favor of a buyout.
So obviously they get flooded.
Yeah, it's two of them get flooded, one of them does not, but the one that doesn't, she doesn't care either way. She's an elderly lady, so if we, fair offer, she'll probably take it and move in with family.
You know, if they get the two that get flooded, do they have flood insurance and get claims?
One has one's a rental property, and I'm not sure because the property owner passed away last year. The one that gets it the worst had flood insurance. They let it lapse. 5 days after it lapsed, they got flooded. And they have since moved out, but they still own the property.
John, does that conclude the one on Clearview just before Royal Drive? Or are you just talking about Z Street?
I'm just talking about Z Street. I haven't gotten any calls from the one off of Clearview.
If you look at flood data, that one 317 Clearview Drive, it's in the 100-year.
Okay.
Got 4, 5, 6, 7 around there in the 500-year.
Okay.
Okay. All right, this next one looks like you've got a couple of HMGP grants under review.
Yeah, we've got one that is still under review at the federal level. It passed everything on the state side. And it's actually been under federal review since, I'm not sure, probably late summer, early fall.
Not uncommon. All right. And that was for what type of
That
activity?
is for Nationwide Homes, which is one of the employers in the city, and they are in a floodplain.
Okay, storm
I think
drain.
it was a little over $1 million was the project.
Okay, so that one we want to leave alone. This is kind of a catch-all one, so that's good. Purchase a backup generator for the middle school. So I think we talked about this one already. So this is a redundant.
Yeah, and the other one is the Beaver Creek Pump Station, which Jeff said that they have put back into the capital plan.
Right. Okay, conduct annual review of repetitive losses, severe repetitive loss properties to ensure accuracy, include verification of locations, etc. By filling out FEMA's form.
The problem with this one is the repetitive loss and severe repetitive loss property list only show up if those people file a claim, from what I understand.
Right.
And I had that one residential property owner that had flood insurance, but they never filed a claim, although they've been flooded out, I don't know, 7 or 8 times, as well as Nationwide Homes, which they're submitting claims now, and I've got a good record of those. But
Yeah.
other than actually being there and knowing that they flooded, that's about the only record we have. And we got to find some way to get around that and get it documented.
The other problem with the repetitive loss and severe repetitive loss list is, especially the rep loss, is you can come on and off of that list because they measure things in a 10-year time frame. So you could have 5 losses, but if the last one was 11 years ago, you fall off of the list. So it's not, it generally captures properties, but there's a lot of circumstances where you can fall on and off of that list. We'll update the numbers associated with that based on FEMA's most current information. Obviously, we can't put the locations in the plan, but we'll talk about how many you have now as opposed to 2016 and how much the claims were. All right, that was the last one. So we will attempt to turn that notes column at the end and modify the ones that we talked about and get some language back to you. But pretty much we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish today. Again, that after that next big mitigation advisory committee meeting, the next smaller meeting like this that we'll have will be specifically to focus on developing a new strategy going forward. And when we come to you for that meeting, we'll have at least our interpretation of these carry forward ones available for you to review. And that'll be probably a couple months from now. That is all we had on our list of to-dos for today. Anybody else have any questions or comments or burning things that you want to see in the next strategy that you want us to capture notes on today? Otherwise, I think we can call it a wrap.
Hey, Scott, I just put the annual budget number in the chat section. I just now got that.
Okay. Paige, can you grab that? Sorry, Jade, not Paige.
Yeah.
Can you grab that and throw it into your notes?
Yep.
All right. Appreciate that, John. All right. Well, it was a long meeting, but we finished a half an hour early. I think it was productive. I appreciate all your time and input. And we will be back in touch soon.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Right?
Bye.
Right.